So I only got to meet Elon once, but I know his brother Cameron pretty well.
I just spent time with him.
All right, we're good to go here?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's
really,
give him 1
really
second.
fabulous.
I think he's a...
People are excited about you, Adam. So
Yeah.
A
lot of
okay,
fun.
like that,
Stabilizing.
like that.
No, our time is running out.
Yes.
All right, time's running here,
Yeah.
people. I just want to get the ground rules for this panel set before we start. Your mics are going to be muted when you're not answering a question. You have 2 minutes to respond. We're going to real-time fact check. So this is the way we're going to run things here.
We're not good at
Okay, well, I'm out.
All right, but we're going to have a lot of free speech on this. All right, so let's do this thing. I'm really honored to moderate this panel. A lot of really fantastic people that I've known of or known for a long time. This is Henry Schuck. He is the CEO, founder of ZoomInfo. Adam Singolda, CEO, founder of Taboola. I'm going to go to Linda Yaccarino for a second because she is the CEO of X. And I want to go to John Sculley. Here's a guy I've known for a while, I've looked up to for a long time. I'm not going to give the bios of everyone else, but he was, in the 70s and early 80s, the president of North America at Pepsi. He is responsible for bringing that brand back and giving us new Coke, basically. So Google it, kids. It's not pretty. But then he was brought into Apple to revitalize that product. And since then, he's been a multiple-time founder, entrepreneur extraordinaire. So I'm really psyched to have John on this panel here. All right, so what are we talking about here? We're talking about perspectives on driving business transformation. It's from the CEO set here. I want to start with Linda because you are in a very interesting situation.
How did I get that first slot?
Well, no, why I want to start here is because, for instance, we have a handful of founders here. They've taken their companies from private to public. Yeah. You just joined a company that was, I think, public for 10 years, was taken private. You're brought in to be the CEO of this company and transform this business. Now, just real quickly, I've known Linda for a while. She was like the preeminent ad exec on the planet here, so brought in to transform what was Twitter to X. So talk to us a little bit about your thought process. You've taken the job, what the goal was there, and how things are going.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. It's exciting to be here. Well, I think it's important just to level set. I know many of you in the room, but some of you don't. It's good to give just a little bit of a setup or a reset of how I landed in the chair, not this particular chair, but the chair you described. So when I was at NBC Universal, one of the parts of my remit was to oversee all the enterprise relationships for Comcast, NBCU. Then Twitter was one of them. So for almost 10 years, I fell in love with the platform because I knew one thing. Obviously, we all know where media consumption was going globally, and that was not going to change. And there was only one company that could take important content, real-time conversation, and take it from big screen, maybe in the wall in your house, to screen in your lap, to the screen in your hand in real time. So I knew for a very long time there was no surrogate to that. So when Elon bought the company, I was, still had my old peacock hat on, and I reached out to him because I thought it was really important, because I felt really strongly about the outsized reaction that the media ecosystem had to the acquisition of the company. And when I spoke to him, when I finally met up with him, I spoke to him, and we talked about, not Twitter, but what his crystal clear vision of X, the everything app, was, the scope of the ambition and the pace of the innovation was astounding, right? And so when you think about the transformation of the company, in addition to the constellation of companies that we're in, think about it. We're either reinventing industry or disrupting or creating new industry, whether it is Starlink, SpaceX, Tesla, The Boring Company, Neuralink, XAI, and here we are, X, driven by this mission of innovation. Now, you come into the company or transform it. If I was invited last year to this event, which I was not, this is my first year, but would any of you believe me that what Twitter was, I would have been talking to you about a live stream first commercial spacewalk from space, a live stream symphony from around the world where you could be commenting in real time. Renewed relationship with the NFL, where I think we're 3 weeks in, right? 2 billion video views because of the extreme acceleration of video capabilities on the platform, or a sitting president announcing him stepping aside from his re-election campaign on the platform to what today is probably totaling about 500 million views. You probably would have said, slow down a little bit, that might not happen. But I talk to you about all of that because of the scope of the innovation, and that's what's driving all the accelerated growth, users, the business momentum on the platform, and global advertisers returning. And when you have the opportunity to lead that transformation, it was pretty easy to join that and say, let's go.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll get an opportunity.
Dad, I just want to know that, Linda, you also worked with Taboola at NBC, but you didn't fall in love with us. Like, why only Twitter gets the love? What about, fall in love with Taboola? And I'm just, if I may be afraid.
Well, you never
Jewish
asked
guilt
me,
always works.
You never asked me to join your company, so that's one thing. But I think we have some good conversations going on, so I'm excited.
His mic is going to be muted. So, John, you've been operating in the corporate CEO suite for a very long time, some very big public companies, and over the last 25 years, I think you founded with our good friend David a handful of private companies, had some great results there. In 1985, you joined the MIT Media Labs Advisory Board, and back then, that was focused on machine learning and AI, and it seemed like back then, probably some sci-fi stuff. Right? So I'd love to get your perspective, because over the course of this day, you're going to hear from a lot of CEOs, CMOs, and a lot of other executives talking about how they're thinking about generative AI. For a lot of them, it might be very new to what they're thinking about their businesses. It might transform their businesses. Give us a sense of like how that thought process has evolved, because I know things have accelerated pretty dramatically over the last few years.
Well, as I think back, joining the MIT Media Lab Advisory Board at the founding in 1985 was really one of the seminal moments in my life. Alan Kay, who had been one of the inventors of the personal computer, the Dynabook, and was an Apple Fellow, came to me after Steve Jobs left, and he said, John, next time we won't have Xerox PARC, Palo Alto Research Center, because Steve and later Bill Gates had taken all of that technology. So I said, so what do we do? He said, well, I'm now an adjunct professor, in addition to being a fellow at Apple, at this new MIT Media Lab. So he took me up there. Jerry Wiesner and Nicholas Negarpani, who founded it, asked me to join. And that began a journey for me and for Apple. Most people don't know this story, Dan, but if you look at the technologies that we invested in at Apple after 1985, the majority of them came out of Cambridge, both Cambridge, England, because we became the largest shareholder in ARM, the microprocessor. We set up a lab at 1 Kendall Square. We wrote the operating system for ARM. We wrote all the object-oriented program apps at that time. We wrote all the tools for it. We did so many things up there. But one of the most interesting was working with Marvin Minsky, acknowledges maybe the father of artificial intelligence, Seymour Papert, John McCarthy, Danny Hillis, some of the really greats who were trying to figure out what is artificial intelligence. And Marvin Minsky wrote a couple of years later, after that, a book called The Society of Mind. And in it he described this concept he called intelligent agents. Sounds familiar. But at that time, there wasn't much that could be done with artificial intelligence for one simple reason. We didn't have the compute power to be able to create the massive amounts of data that's required to make something like generative AI even function with large LLMs. So you had visionaries like Minsky. He was blamed for a while as destroying the future of a lot of very smart people, getting them into AI back in that time, because you couldn't do anything with it that was commercially possible. But at the same time, he was laying the foundation for what became what we live on today. So I look back at the MIT Media Lab as seminal for Apple because of the ARM processor and other things that we did up in Cambridge, Massachusetts. But I also look at it as kind of a chance to see, so where did this stuff all begin that we now call artificial intelligence?
Well, we can all thank John for your Apple Intelligence on the iOS 18 because that was the beginning of it there. Let's talk a little bit about culture, Adam. I know this is something important. I think it's important to all of you, but important to you. You and I have chatted about it. When you think about these advancements, how quickly they're happening, I think a lot of CEOs probably can't predict how it's going to affect a lot of their stakeholders, whether it be their employees, their customers, and the like here. How are you guys thinking about it, especially as we've had pretty volatile 5 years? There's lots of things that have challenged corporate cultures and the like. CEOs have probably been working 3x of what they were doing pre-COVID and the like. So how are you guys thinking about it? Because I know that you've been integrating a lot of this technology for a few years or longer into your platform.
I mean, I always thought that culture and people is the main innovation and differentiation for all companies. I mean, I can copy your website, I can copy your strategy, how your product looks like, but it's really hard to copy a company's culture and a company's group of people that are working together, passionately and almost, insanely towards one mission. So I always thought this is what makes winners, what separates winners and losers, and that's the true superpower of a company. But then, Google wasn't first, became the biggest. Facebook wasn't first, became the biggest. So being the first doesn't matter. Being the most funded doesn't matter. Having the best group of people with the right culture, this is the true superpower of a company. I always thought that. But then add the last 4 years to it, right? Like from the pandemic to the recession, inflation, a war in Ukraine, a war in Israel now. Suddenly, us leaders are being, it started with having a conversation about which headphones and screens we sent our employees so they can be productive at home because it was noisy with the kids and all the stuff. And it now got to the point that if I compare 10 years ago, I've been doing this for a while, if you said something to your employees, they would leave. Now, if you say nothing to your employees, they leave. Like, they expect you, employees of these days, young and of all ages, they want to know what you stand for. They want to know why you do what you do, what are your value system, and they want to be connected to this more than just a job. And you can delegate culture. I can pay $9 to cheat GPT, and I made ChatGPT, and
what happened to Grok?
Yeah, and and I can get it, but I can't pay $9 to get a culture. So artificial intelligence is cool. But I don't think that's the true innovation of the company. I think it's not AI, it's HI, it's human intelligence. And I'll give you one example of these days for us. Obviously, as my accent strongly suggests, I'm from the Holy Land, Israel. And during these times, we're about 2,000 employees at Taboola. So I thought about it a lot when this whole thing started, and I said, I have to talk to my people. And I wasn't sure exactly what I'm going to say, so I just invited 2,000 people to a call. And I said, look, I'm just going to talk to you about my thoughts. I'm going to share what I feel. And I said, look, here's what I don't this is not, we're a company, we're a business. There's no room for politics. So here's what I don't expect you to do. I don't expect you to change your Zoom background to the flag of Israel. That's not your job. Don't retweet my tweets. Those are mine. Thank you, Linda. However, I do expect you to have a uniquely high degree of empathy to each other, to your clients, to your partners, and to your friends in Israel. And that is part of our value system. And I can tell you, throughout this transparency and empathy and culture as innovation, I think this is, it brought us even more together. So to me, this is the main thing that changed really even more over the last 3 or 4 years. We don't have the luxury of delegate culture to anyone. We have to decide what we stand for, speak about it. I speak about it publicly. I take a risk by doing that. I share my thoughts on Twitter, but I can't not do it. One, I'm going to look back and ask myself, what did I do when things happen in the world, and what did I share with my employees that matters to me and us? And I hope I can be proud of all those things.
I think I have to jump in. Uniquely, you're being a little modest there, because I've heard you speak so many times, and you use the important words like authenticity and empathy. But when you do that, it's very effective and powerful, because it's noticeable that you're willing to be vulnerable. And I think that, and I know that your company appreciates that. And when you made the comment about if you didn't say anything, employees used to leave, and now when you do say something, they want you to say something. But I think it's really important that you lead out loud a bit and you share with them in real time. So
thank you.
Henry, so we started with Linda talking about her experience of taking the helm of a company that was public to private. You founded a company. right before, right during COVID. I think it was the first IPO back in 2020. Okay, so he runs a B2B data platform, and you can go into a bit more of that. So what do you think about how these few years have been, the way you think about technology? It's obviously the backbone of the product and the services that you deploy here. What's changed for you in the last 5 years, both from private to public, but also how you're thinking about technology and how quickly you're integrating some of this technology? And is it really based on your vision for the platform you want to serve your customers, or is it that technology, the customers are demanding it? So a little bit, a couple different things. I know you've been patient over there. That's why I wanted to give you a couple.
I'll sit around and watch them speak all day if you. Look, I think if you even just go back 3 years and you're a software company, kind of everything changed. You know, 3 years ago, we were investing AI, but we weren't like fundamentally changing our businesses to focus on what AI could do for us. We had a different, every software business had a different go-to-market motion. In 2021, software companies, our clients, they were focused on growth at all costs. And all of a sudden, in 2022, this paradigm shifted from, hey, top line is the most important thing, to you better figure out how to do it efficiently, you better figure out how to do it profitably. Just about every software company, I think with the exception of Zeta, decelerated between 2021 and 2024. They slowed down, growth slowed down for every publicly traded software company. And so then the motion of acquiring customers had to change. And so where historically you were focused on, hey, I'll go get business from anywhere, I'll get it from the enterprise, I'll get it from the mid-market, I'll get it from the SMB, all of a sudden the models inside of companies started shifting to, you know what, my most profitable customers, they look like this. And so instead of allocating my resources down here or to this sort of less profitable customer base, in today's world, in 2024, I want to put my resources behind the customers that drive the most growth, the most profitability in my businesses. And then, from a product perspective, when you saw the power of generative AI, your view about your business had to fundamentally change. And you had to look at it and go, I'm either dead or it's the biggest opportunity in the history of our business. And at ZoomInfo, we looked at the opportunity and said, this is the biggest opportunity in the history of our business. It'll make our platform, you know, from the very basics, much easier to use, to much more effective for our customers to use. The power of the LLMs to take what used to be a number of disparate signals that you can get from the data and actually consolidate it, personalize it for the customer, and then deliver it to them in a way that they can actually take action against it in a simplified experience is endlessly powerful for sales and marketing organizations. And so I think if you haven't fundamentally changed the way you think about your business, the way you think about your work between 2021, and we don't even have to go back 5 years, between 2021 and 2024, you are certainly going to be behind because many, many people are fundamentally changing the way they think about internally, their product, their customers, the way they acquire customers. And so, you know, I'm running around the company going, look, the pace of change over the last 2 years has been exponentially faster than the 15 years before it. And so what does your organization, what does our organization have to look like? It has to be agile, it has to be connected, it has to be communicative. We have to build an organization that can move much more quickly than it's ever had to move in our history.
Really quickly, and you know, Linda's been able to retool and transform her company, or at least kind of move in that direction, out of the public eye as a private company. How do you think about the investments that you're making, understanding that the return on those investments, right, may be years out? How has that changed for you as a public company CEO?
Yeah, I'll tell you two things. One, a lot of this we have to fund internally. And so as a public company, you don't have an endless opportunity to take down margin to fund your business. You do have an opportunity, and I'll talk about that. But first, you're looking across the business and going, like, I'm going to allocate resources from this thing to that thing. I'm going to move resources around. And you know, to be able to do that, you need to have a pretty collaborative team. We have lots of discussions where we want to invest in something from an engineering perspective, and someone from marketing and sales raises their hand and says, hey, you can take 5 of my headcount headcount for that. You can take 10 of my headcount for that. So you have to have a pretty collaborative team to get that done. And then the second thing is you can invest behind AI as a public company. You should be. And your investors actually expect you to. But they also expect you to lay out a very clear plan for how you're going to get a return on that investment. And ideally give an incremental disclosure that tells them, that gives them a pathway to getting a return on that. And so if you want to go invest behind a key initiative that you believe creates long-term success, what are the metrics that you can share with your public investors over time that gives them confidence that it's actually going to provide a return in the future?
Right. So Linda, let's focus on something, free speech, and this is something, a pillar of, I guess, the new X. And so you worked, I think, for more than 20 years at two of the biggest media companies on the planet, right? And they're also news organizations, and I think a big focus of this new company, product, rebranded, is free speech. So how do you think, what attracted you to that mission? Do you think you're living up to that mission? And do you think that you're going to be able to change the processes of a lot of other traditional media companies?
Well, first of all, I will get to that, but I do have to comment on something that you said about the difference between a public company and a private company and being out of the public eye.
Yeah.
So I need your help reminding a lot of people that our company is, we are in the public eye. There's an insatiable interest from everyone on our company, and it's because of everything we're doing from, a technological innovation, but also being a unique platform that, coming in as a leader, you're often brought in to transform the company, and your values and your mission need to become immediately crystal clear to the organization. What drew me to the company was the vision of protecting free speech around the world. So when you think about the success of democracy, it depends on thriving freedom of speech, and everyone in this room should take a beat and think about things that have happened in the last year where that is under attack. In England, in France, in Ireland, in Australia, ongoing, in Brazil. And again, I repeat, there's no surrogacy for X because people come to X all over the world in the world's most important moments. And we give the ability for the free flow of information and to share and educate what's going on around the world. And the importance of protecting the freedom of speech is that crystal clear vision and value. And when you combine that with the innovations that I talked about a few minutes ago, the platform usage around the world is growing. Users by the numbers are growing. Daily consumption is growing. Global marketers are returning back to the platform. So in fact, it turns out that protecting free speech around the world is also good for business.
Yeah, and ultimately, I mean, what I meant was, each quarter you don't have to report on a bunch of metrics.
I know.
No, but, and listen, and you say, our traffic's growing, the advertisers are coming back. You can do that as a private company and not actually give a whole bunch of data, to be fair.
You are correct.
That's what I really mean.
You are correct.
Mr. Sculley, so this is really important, I think, for this audience here. So you were a really important force of one of the biggest consumer companies in the world at a really interesting time where lots of products in the US were just exploding around the world. Different tastes, and I don't mean that literally, but as you think about that, then obviously you went to one of the best consumer products company we've ever seen on this planet, and probably remains that way. When you think about the advances that we're seeing in generative AI, how do you see that playing out, let's say, away from technology? So some like verticals, like consumer, for instance, that have not thought about what the potential is to impact their businesses and how they might be selling their products or services from here on out?
I think, Dan, if you really zoom out and you think about this in the context of what happened after the Industrial Revolution. And the 19th century had to change so that we could really change in the 20th century. But it took a long time for things to happen. The big difference with AI, the era we're in now, is that we're growing at an exponential rate of change. Exponential means it's compounding. You know,
Adam, so that means it's compounded.
yeah.
Say it again.
Compounding, Adam, compounding.
Yeah.
So you've got a curve that looks like this. So that it means what took a century after the Industrial Revolution is you're going to see a lot between now and 2030. Now think about that. For the world, it has to mean we've got to start to reskill people as to what is work. And it's going to dramatically change the kind of skills. Unfortunately, our education system, can't even keep up with what we needed, several generations ago. So there's not much hope that they're going to make a big difference soon. So it's got to happen somewhere else. And I think that the reskilling is going to happen in the private sector as much as anywhere. I think it's going to happen in the education world. In my opinion, we really don't need half the population going to college. It's too expensive at the way it's priced today. We need alternatives for people to go, not just plumbers and electricians and others, which are really great jobs if you think about it, but we need alternative ways of reskilling people. And the great thing about artificial intelligence is that it can not only be a revolution for the reasons why you want to reskill people, it can actually be the enabling tools to reskill people. So I think you've got to look at it in the context of, in an exponential era, just 5 years, what will happen between 2025 and 2030, and how much can happen in reskilling, not because the government did anything, or not because the education system did anything, but because the momentum and the just sucking up the energy of a lot of the economy.
Yeah, thank you. We just have 2 minutes left, Adam, and I know this is going to be really hard for you. But talk to us a little bit about how this is impacting the ad market, the digital ad market, the way you see it, and some of the changes that you guys have made.
2 minutes, 12 seconds. So one, I think it's great. It's the best time to be in advertising, which affects all of us, because first line of EBITDA for Amazon ads, Netflix ads, Disney ads. Uber, more than $1 billion a year this year in ads. Uber is supposed to be taking us from one place to the other. So everyone wants to be, advertising is the new pink, and everybody wants in, Fortune 500 company CEOs are having a discussion about what's your advertising strategy. I think it's great for all of us in this room because there's going to be a whole new slew of companies that's not Facebook and Google. Let's hope Google gets broken down to pieces. But I mean, in the whole future, we'll have a whole new generation of companies that will be big. Was that too much? No. Will be big, in driving advertising revenue, which means a lot of new ecosystem of technology companies that can work with them. So I'm fairly excited about it. I also think that in terms of the trends I'm seeing, especially with AI, to John's point, is that now, remember, businesses pay money, which is a word that you know very well. The reason they pay money to advertise is to drive growth for their business. We all love a great, big ad, but what we really like is clients. We want to see growth for the business. So I'm also seeing a bit less of, wine and dine, give me Chateau Lafite, I'll give you an RFP, and I see more of, I'll give you budget, show me it works, I'll give you a lot more of it. So I think performance advertising is becoming a bigger portion of the mix as we address, as we become in $1 trillion market, which is a lot of AI. And I will say something I said last year about AI, which is important for all of us to know, and I feel bad for investors because they hear so much AI all the time, and it's so much. So there's a huge difference between, machine learning, ML, deep learning, DL, which is the evolution of ML. I'm the only engineer here, by the way, when we speak about compounding. But nevertheless, there's a big difference between ML, machine learning, DL, and bullshit, BS. And the reason is it's really hard to do it. And so I think the biggest challenge with AI is, can you match a lot of information on one side with the other? I think it's a bit less about the Gen AI of creatives that will impact multiple industries, but the core AI, that's the biggest challenge we're all facing.
All right, Henry, Adam, John, Linda, thank you guys so much for being here. Maybe Linda might get invited back next year. I don't know.
But can I say one thing? I have to say it. I have one thing. So before I leave, first I want to say, first of all, I was in Zeta. This is for Zeta. You guys are amazing, David amazing, and I was in Zeta Live 1. I'm an OG. So I was in the first one, and I just want to say, Davos had Kim Kardashian, you have Schuck, you so won. So great job.